Welcome. I'm Superintendent Bill Furbush. This is the second edition of Pelham School District Today. Today we have two honored guests. We have the Director of Student Services, Dr. Kimberly Lazard. We also have Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Sarah Mirandos. And today we're going to be talking about some of the programming that we have for our students that support our students in many different ways. You're going to learn about the SOS program that we have in place and the BIMAS 2 screening that we use for our students. And to help us learn a little bit more about each of those programs, we have our two honored guests. I would like to start with the first questions around SOS questions.
Sure.
What is the SOS program and how is it being implemented in Pelham?
So the SOS program is the Signs of Suicide program. So it is a suicide prevention program that is being implemented primarily in 9th grade, although we are rolling it down a little bit to 8th grade this year. So this is an evidence-based curriculum that we use to teach students about the signs of suicide and what to do if one of their peers were to disclose to them that they were having thoughts of suicide.
What a great idea. In fact, students oftentimes are probably the first to be aware of their peers who might need some assistance or distress. And so
Right.
You're actually helping educate them around what to do and how do we respond and assist our friends if they were in that situation.
Right.
Why is the district implementing the SOS program?
So several years ago, when we had our results from our youth risk behavior survey that's conducted by the state, we looked at that data and found that we were pretty concerned with the numbers that we were seeing related to students reporting that they were having symptoms of depression or that they had had serious thoughts of wanting to either engage in non-suicidal self-injurious behavior, so things like cutting, or other kinds of behaviors, or that they had had serious thoughts of wanting to kill themselves. So as a district, the group got together and said, we need to do something to kind of stop this and to engage in some prevention activities. And so SOS came from that. This is, again, an evidence-based program, so it's been evaluated by SAMHSA, which is the group that kind of looks at mental health interventions and preventative educational kinds of strategies, and we got some training around that. We brought some of our staff out to be SOS trained administrators, and we started teaching our teachers, and we started rolling it out in 9th grade because that was the area that we felt like we really needed to target.
Suicide is such a heavy topic. Oftentimes as a society we try to avoid this topic. Why do you feel that it's a good idea to bring it up and talk to children about it and develop these skills?
Right. Well, I think it's a really common misunderstanding that a lot of people have, that if we talk about suicide, that it might lead kids to think that that's an option for them. And the research says that that's not the case at all. It says that the more we are open about it and the more we talk about it, the better able we are to identify those that are at risk for killing themselves and to kind of intervene early enough that we can stop it, hopefully. So it's a really important topic that we're talking about and that we're not kind of leaving it in the dark. It's a way of destigmatizing it.
Thanks. The district has been implementing SOS for 3 years now. Have we seen any positive outcomes or results?
Yeah, so certainly we've seen, when we looked at our 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, we've seen a slight decrease in the number of students that are reporting that they've engaged in those non-suicidal self-injurious behaviors. We have also seen a slight decrease in the number of youth that are reporting that they have had a serious suicide attempt, so one that required medical attention. We're staying about the same level in terms of kids that are reporting that they are having thoughts of suicide, so this just speaks to the importance of continuing to provide that level of prevention and to continue to raise awareness in this area. And I think one of the most important reasons for it is really that we know that students aren't going to disclose to an adult first. They're going to disclose to their peers. And the SOS program really teaches their peers what to do if one of their friends were to disclose to them. And that's really important because if we're letting their peers know, okay, acknowledge your friend's feelings, express some concern for them, and then tell a trusted adult so that we can get them the help that they need. And that's really the important piece of it, is teaching those peers what to do.
Sometimes we just can't keep secrets, and our students need to understand that, even
Right.
if they're confided in. There's some things that are just too important
Right.
to do that. What are some of the warning signs of suicide to help our parents out there? What should they look for as well? Because oftentimes, as you said, children may not confide in an adult. They may confide in another friend or student. But as a parent, what might we look for?
So the biggest thing to look for is big changes in behavior. Is your child, who's normally very outgoing, all of a sudden withdrawing from their peers and not wanting to engage in the activities that they really love? You kind of have to look at, is that developmentally appropriate? Because sometimes as kids enter adolescence, they lose their love of certain activities and start engaging in others. So you really want to look for that complete withdrawal. Look for sadness. Look for kind of that lack of engagement, maybe a change in their academic functioning. It may be a student who was typically very good is now all of a sudden really struggling. So look for those changes. Certainly talk with your school counselor if you have concerns, and they can point you in the direction of where you can go to get some resources. And another really great resource that we have coming is on December 11th, we have Dr. Phil Robbins coming to speak to parents in the community about adolescent development and what's typical and what's not, to kind of get another broader sense of what kinds of things you might be looking for.
Nice. And so again, that's December 11th, Dr.
December
Phil
11th,
Robbins?
Dr. Phil Robbins, yep.
Awesome. Very looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much for bringing the SOS program to our students. If we can just help one child, it's a success.
Right.
And so thank you for educating our students and bringing that program to help them support each other and support parents and support educators alike to help identify these signs early and know how to intervene. Thank you. We're now going to switch questions to the BIMAS 2 questions. Am I saying that correctly?
BIMAS.
BIMAS,
yeah.
2 questions. All right. What is BIMAS 2?
So the BIMAS 2 is a universal screener that's scored by the classroom teacher. It's a brief, repeatable measure of social, emotional, and behavioral functioning. It's appropriate for ages 5 through 18. The BIMAS includes 34 items that are used for universal screening in response to intervention. It was developed based on years of research and a scientific model that identified items that are sensitive to change.
Wow. Thank you. Can just for some people who might not know what a universal screener is, tell us what that means.
A universal screener is an online tool that teachers use to evaluate their students, and it flags students with certain behaviors and lets us know how to create better intervention plans for them.
So it's given to what students?
Well, right now we're currently doing it in the 5th grade, but it's given to all students. So it's not certain students are selected and others are not. We do have a parent permission that we'll get into a little bit later, but it's a universal screener, so for all students.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Kimberly Lazard, a question for you. Why is measuring social, emotional, and behavioral functioning important?
So mental health concerns are common. When we look at some of the data, in regards to statistics and prevalence, in 2011, it was reported that as many as 1 in 7 children between the ages of 2 and 8 had been diagnosed with a mental health condition in the United States. So it's really common and prevalent. And we know that early identification of mental health concerns is important. It leads to substantially better outcomes over the long term when we can start aligning those resources. So by using these screeners to kind of identify kids that may be at risk, we can better align our resources and our interventions so that we can meet their needs and hopefully prevent those negative outcomes over the long term.
Thank you. How is BIMAS being used in the Pelham School District?
So right now what we are doing is we're in the kind of our trialing stages with the BIMAS. So as Sarah mentioned, we're currently using it in all of our 5th grade classrooms. Last year we trialed it in a single 1st grade classroom and in some of our smaller programs for students with emotional disabilities. We're really working on getting a sense of, is this going to be an effective tool for Pelham? It's used broadly in a lot of other districts and towns. Matter of fact, it's used in all of Boston Public Schools. That's their universal screener that they're using. And there's been really good reports about the feedback. But we're trying to figure out, is it going to work in Pelham right now? So one of the things that we're really hoping to use from this is by gathering this information, we can help develop interventions for students. So we can identify what are the needed interventions for kids, and we can get those services to those students in a quick and efficient manner.
So just for me to recap, the universal screener is used right now in 5th grade. And then it might identify some students who may have what we might call red flags or concerns. And then that's when we get further investigation into that situation and ask questions of that child. And then we would then come up with abilities to intervene. And the early intervention, as you pointed out, is crucial to help change that, help give them the supports that they need and the skills that they need.
Right.
Thank you. Sarah, you've talked about already that we're using this in 5th grade, but can you elaborate a little bit around how parents are required to give permission into the BIMAS to be administered?
Yes, as a district, we recognize that there has been some controversy around screening for social emotional development. In addition, there was a law that was passed in the state that requires parents to opt in. So we have a permission letter that is sent home, and we encourage our parents to ask questions of their child's teacher. Students are not being asked to complete any forms, but we feel like it is very necessary for parents to have informed consent about the process.
Can they actually see the BIMAS too?
They can. If parents want to preview the questions on the BIMAS, they can contact their child's teacher, and we are more than happy to go over that with you.
Now, there might be some confusion around using a universal screener to identify students that need additional supports or skills that we might want to intervene with. But is it a diagnosis?
No. So the BIMAS tool is not a diagnostic tool, it's a screening tool. And it's really meant to identify what some of the strengths and needs are of particular children. So it's not used to diagnose at all. As a school, we don't do that. It's really meant to identify what services are needed for particular students.
And that brings me to the next question. Then how is that? What does that look like? What are the BIMAS 2 being used? How is it being used? The information.
So the information that we gather through the use of the BIMAS will really help the educational team to coordinate kind of our interventions. So what happens is, right now all of our 5th grade teachers have currently screened the students in their classroom based upon those that provided permission. We then will look at that data, identify what the areas of need are. It may be that we see a pattern that in a particular classroom there's social skills weaknesses, and we need to then look at that teacher's classroom and say to that teacher, okay, how can we embed some of these social skills lessons into your classroom so that we can strengthen that area. It may also be identifying groups of students that have particular needs. Like maybe we have a small group of students that have a lot of anxiety, and we need to then run an anxiety management group and teach some of those kids some of those coping skills so that they can better access their education. So it really helps us to target what interventions we need to offer and to who.
Wow, thank you. Will the information from BIMAS 2 go on a report card? And how will parents be informed if there are any concerns raised by the BIMAS 2?
The results of the BIMAS will not go on the report card. If any concerns emerge, the classroom teacher would reach out to that parent just like they would for any academic concern. So certainly if any flags come up, we would communicate that with the parent.
Nice. Well, I don't have any other questions. So thank you so much for both of you coming and explaining to me a little bit further about what it is that we're providing for our students, and then for everyone who's watching. So thank you so much for the great work that you're doing for our students and providing with them the skills necessary to be successful.
Thanks.
Thank you.